We have some very interesting NHL trade rumors to take a look at today, focusing on the Leafs, the Oilers, and the Canucks. We got news on New Jersey and our new head coach. We have a big announcement coming tomorrow regarding Gabriel Landeskog. We get speculation on what that's going to involve. We also have lots of other coaching updates as well. Plus, speaking of coaches, we have our Jack Adams Award winner announced as well. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to cover here today. Let's dive in first with a bunch of news regarding NHL coaching news. Some of it's rumors, some of it's been confirmed. We got news earlier today. In case you missed my video from a few hours ago, Sheldon Keefe will be the new head coach of the New Jersey Devils. Of course, after leaving Toronto, it didn't take long for Keefe to generate some interest around other teams. As soon as he became available, he apparently shot up the list to being one of the top candidates for New Jersey. I think the part of the reason why this took a little bit to get confirmed is that Keefe and his family were kind of taking some time. I think Sheldon had to decide if he wanted to jump right back into another coaching job or if he wanted to have some time off and have a break in between. Obviously, I think for some coaches, especially when you're still newer to the game, I mean, yes, some guys have been in a game 20, 30 years and had, 3, 4, 5 opportunities, and, maybe they take a break. They've obviously, financially made lots of money. They've, worked 20 years straight or something like that. You feel differently, but when you're still newer to the game, you want to stay relevant. And if I'm Sheldon Keefe, if I take time off, I mean, yes, my resume is pretty good, but I think I'm a little bit worried that, people might forget about me. And a lot of other guys are going to possibly lose jobs in the next year and become available and be the hot topic. And, this all kind of depends on how things go. So I think it's wise on his part to jump right back into another opportunity. The Devils saw a lot of similarities in how they're built compared to the Leafs, working with a, highly skilled group of young core players. So they certainly like that. Obviously, a lot of regular season success. So clearly, they like that, and obviously they like the fact of how he deals with things, how he involves so many different aspects of the organization and whatnot. So certainly was a lot to like on their part compared to some of the other guys they talked to, like Jay Woodcroft and Todd McClellan. So Keefe will be announced likely officially tomorrow, and we'll see when they speak to the media. It's probably sometime in the next couple of days, but Keefe is confirmed to be in New Jersey. Now, of course, just in the past day or two, we get confirmation of Craig Berube becoming the new head coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they just met with the media here after the long weekend. We got news today that's likely going to impact the staff of Craig Berube. We got word just in the last little bit here that the Calgary Flames and assistant coach Mark Savard have mutually agreed to part ways. As we've talked about here regarding the Berube news, there were some rumors and speculation on who Craig Berube wanted to have on his staff, wherever he landed, and especially as things were ramping up towards becoming the Toronto Maple Leafs, and Mark Savard was on that list, along with maybe DJ Smith. But for right now, Mark Savard and DJ Smith were both technically employed by other teams. Obviously, Savard had interest to head back to the home province of Ontario and work with somebody who he had a chance to work with in St. Louis. So Mark Savard has parted ways with the Flames. This has not been confirmed. Toronto has not announced the hiring of him. But with all the rumors surrounding it and the fact that he just got let out of his contract in Calgary, I mean, it's the worst kept secret in hockey right now. So Mark Savard will be heading to Toronto, and expectation is they'll be named here in the next little bit as an assistant coach to Craig Berube. As far as DJ Smith goes, well, we finally got confirmation today in LA that Jim Hiller is the next full-time head coach of the Los Angeles Kings. Now, I didn't bother doing a dedicated video on that piece of news earlier because he's already been the interim head coach, just had the interim tag removed, so it's not as big of a change. So therefore, in my opinion, not as big of a piece of news, but it is important that we talk about it. Clearly, he did have to work out a multi-year contract to remain the head coach. Rob Blake and the team there were quite content with what he did for a job leading them into the playoffs. Had a good record down the stretch after he took over from Todd McClellan, and ultimately they didn't get over the hump and win that first round playoff series like they haven't done in the past 3 years since getting back into being a playoff team. But there's things to build on, things to work on, and the rest of it, I think, for him to be the most effective, it seems to like that the most agree that the roster needs some tweaking. So I suspect that's going to be up to Rob Blake now, obviously, to make some tweaks to the roster to see what Jim Hiller can do. I mean, he's put in lots of time. He's earned his, paid his dues, so to speak. What I meant to say, like, as far as, he put in a lot of time as being an assistant coach on like 3 different teams in the NHL. He's coached in junior, the minors. Like, he's paid his dues. He's earned the right to have that chance. And after the brief interim period, he did well. So the big thing with, I guess, the other piece there is whether or not DJ Smith remains with them. Part of the announcement regarding Hiller was not about his assistant. So we'll have to wait and see on that front. DJ Smith most likely stays with Hiller in LA. There was a team option on his contract. I can't see him up and leaving, even though, like, if he does, or if that wasn't renewed, there was going to be a chance for him to go back to the Leafs, but I don't think that's going to happen. But we'll get confirmation likely on that here in the next little bit as well. Former Seattle Kraken assistant coach Paul McFarland's also landed a new gig. He's expected to be named the next head coach of the Western Hockey League's Calgary Hitmen. So he's taking a step back, going back to junior to become a head coach. Now, all this coaching talk, well, we found out tonight who our Jack Adams Award trophy winner is for this year for Coach of the Year, and that's Canucks bench boss Rick Tocchet. Tocchet did a fantastic job. The Canucks saw a massive turnaround. Went from being a low-ranking team to a playoff team, and not only that, but a playoff team who won a round and came really close to winning 2 rounds after going to Game 7 with the Edmonton Oilers and just ending their season just a couple days ago. Ultimately, Tocchet won this award by a large margin. Andrew Burnett was the second-place coach on the list here, but there was a large gap between the two, with Rick Bowness finishing third and several other coaches getting a little bit of votes and love here and there to round out your top 10 or 12 options there. But Tocchet wins, and by a lot. Now, we also have a signing today. The Tampa Bay Lightning today announced they've signed a prospect defenseman, Dylan Gill. He was taken late in the 7th round of the 2022 NHL draft, so it wasn't too far away from his rights expiring with Tampa. They've signed him. Of course, he had an opportunity to be captain for part of the year this year with his team in the Quebec League in Rouyn-Noranda. So that's certainly good for him, showing good leadership. And of course, something I like about Gill, like to root for the local products. Not too many players in the NHL from my neck of the woods in the province of New Brunswick, and he is a Riverview, New Brunswick native. So nice to see another New Brunswicker get a shot at the NHL and get his rookie contract. So congrats to Dylan Gill with Tampa. Hopefully he has an opportunity to make the NHL sometime here in the next couple of years. Now, on some other news as well, Ondrej Kase wants to make a return to the NHL. Of course, we've seen him play parts of a variety of seasons with the Ducks. I think he had a brief stint with the Canes, with the Maple Leafs for a little bit. And Kase's had a heck of a time staying healthy and has suffered multiple concussions. But after his most recent stint with the Maple Leafs, he went back to Europe. He had a really strong and healthy season this past year and feels like some of those injuries are behind him and would like to make another go of it in the NHL. So when it comes to free agency, certainly look for Ondrej Kase's name to be out there. We know he's got some offensive upside. We know he's got terrific speed. But clearly, like I said, his big knock on him is he just seems to continue to have issues staying healthy, and he's had a lot of headshots. So obviously his doctors feel it's safe for him to continue playing, which is good for him in a sense. Obviously surprising in a way. I wasn't sure what would make of Kase going forward, but obviously things are much better now than the last we've seen or heard of him. So that's good news, and we'll have to look out for his name when free agency rolls around here around July 1 to see if he'll get another contract and chance to play in the NHL once again. Now, as I mentioned as well, Avalanche captain Gabe Landeskog, we could be getting some big news on his future tomorrow morning. We got word from Colorado media that Avalanche general manager Chris MacFarland and captain Gabriel Landeskog are expected to address the media tomorrow morning. I believe it's 9:30. That'd be 9:30 local time in Colorado. So we'll have to see. There's obviously a lot of people jump to conclusions. I know my first instinct was, well, this can't be good. I mean, obviously, Landeskog has not played in 2 years. The last time Gabriel Landeskog took to the ice was the night the Avalanche won the Stanley Cup. He's battled a serious knee injury ever since, and he was obviously playing through the knee injury to finish out the playoffs and to hoist that Stanley Cup. He's had multiple knee surgeries and has had lots of rehab, lots of things that he's worked on, trying to make the long road back here. He's suffered some setbacks. The most recent surgery, which I believe was like a form of a disc replacement or some cartilage replacement in his knee. I believe they consider that to be like his last shot. If that does not work to get him back into NHL action, that they don't really know what else they can do. Now, for a captain who hasn't played in 2 years to have a press conference after the season's over on his own, it doesn't necessarily make you think good news. But I know listening to Jared Bednar towards the end of the playoffs, and I think it might have even been after they lost, because I obviously listened to him speak so many times, I can't remember which time it was, but I know one of the times I remember him being quoted as saying that he really wants to play. And they asked him, had you been able to keep going here and make it to the next round, could Landeskog have played? And he said, no, probably not. So, but he's gone on to say, he wants to play, he wants to make it back. Maybe he's just being optimistic and doesn't want to be the one to put out the bad news. I don't know. I just don't see the point of having a press conference for them to say, yeah, it's been 2 years, but Landeskog fully intends to show up at training camp in the fall and to give it his best to try to play. So I don't know if this is going to be a bad news press conference. I hope not. Gabriel Landeskog was always one of my favorite players. I love how he plays the game. A huge part of that Avalanche team. If he could make it back, that's a game changer for them, especially after everything they've been through with Val Nichushkin and the uncertainty over whether or not he can be relied upon to be there. And of course, at this point, they know they're going to likely start next season without him because the 6 months that he's suspended, that he has to wait to be reinstated. It puts him until November. And then, of course, that would mean he would have missed all the training camp. So, he's probably going to miss the first, if all goes well, a couple months of the year at least, right? Without Landeskog, without Nichushkin, they're just not the same team. They're not as loaded up front. And we'll have to see what this news on Landeskog tomorrow and then how that compounds with the what's going on with Nichushkin and see how this goes. I hope it's good news, and I hope they come out and tell us that he's optimistic he's going to play next year. I'm just not sure they would call a press conference to tell us that. So we'll see. Looking forward to hearing the latest on the Avalanche captain tomorrow morning. Now, as I mentioned, we have some trade talk around the Leafs, Oilers, and Canucks. Let's start with Vancouver, since they're the most recently eliminated team and seem to be one of the hot topics around the rumor mill right now, and what they're going to do to try to come back next year and be just as good or better. They do have a lot of decisions to make, like a lot of teams, and they're not going to have the same group. There's no doubt there's going to be changes. So, to be just as good or better is going to be a challenge, like it is for a lot of teams year after year. I mean, the two names that are kind of hearing the most as far as trades go, one being Filip Hronek, and there's, to a lesser degree, there's still lots of chatter around Thatcher Demko, and I know Elliot Friedman even floated the idea that they may consider buying out Ilya Mikheyev. Now, the difference with some of the contracts you've seen on the books from before, general managers sometimes have an easier time doing a buyout when they're not the one that signed the contract. Mikheyev was one of the first deals that they brought into the mix here on their own, and certainly ever since he had his injuries after landing in Vancouver, he's just not the same player. I find his speed is not quite as good as it was. He's still fast, but not like he was. And he was at 50 games with either 1 or 0 goals. It was quite a brutal stretch of hockey for Ilya Mikheyev. Can he bounce back? I mean, that's a big what if right there. So there is some talk from Friedman that they may consider that. From Filip Hronek, as I've mentioned before, if there's some that think that they're not going to budge off that $8 million asking price, and if they want to push their luck, Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin are going to be like, sorry about your luck, but you're being traded. There's just no way they're going to agree to pay him that much money. Not anywhere close to it. He's going to have to take less than Quinn Hughes, especially after having such an up and down, inconsistent season. The bulk of his production came in the first half. The second half wasn't great. The playoffs weren't great. I don't know. I just don't see him being anywhere near an $8 million player. And I think it could be a massive overreach, overpayment if they do succumb to those demands. And if it goes through arbitration, I'm not even sure arbitration is going to award that much. But Hronek's definitely a player to watch for sure. They have a lot of decisions to make on that back end. They'd like to keep Zadorov, but his price has gone up a lot. They'd like to keep Myers and hopefully have him take a lot less than he's making right now. Obviously, they get Soucy there. Cole has a expiring contract, so they got to decide on Cole. Cole had rough playoffs that time, and if really, as far as having an experience and size back there, if they can retain Myers and Soucy, and if Zadorov does re-sign, I wouldn't be too worried about losing Cole. But, I understand that there's a lot of connections there. They've done a lot of winning with him and their other days in Pittsburgh. I mean, Tocchet knows him well, so does Rutherford and Allvin, so we'll see what that relationship stands. And like I said, there's lots of wondering about the future of Demko after what we saw Shilovs do here in the playoffs. Now, some think it's way too early to talk about a Demko trade, that they'd be crazy to do that, but they could save some money and get a good return if they want to go with Shilovs and bring back Kase DeSmith. Clearly, Shilovs was more than ready for the challenge that was presented in front of him, and he ran with the ball and did extremely well in the playoffs. It's going to push up his value. It's going to push up putting the league on notice for his, his availability here to be a regular NHL goaltender, and a good one at that. So some that feel, because it's not even the first time I've heard this, there was a speculation around Demko back, I want to say maybe towards the end of the regular season. There was, I think it might have been Jeff Merrick talking about it. I'm not 100% sure, saying that he had heard some that were wondering if they would consider moving Demko just because of his health and all the issues they've had, that maybe you want to sell high before the injuries get any worse and he gets any older. Some feel he could be the next Corey Schneider and end up with a lot of hip issues and just not really be the guy that, long-term at least, that you really thought he could be, that his best days might be slowly coming to an end and we might see a different part of his career. That's hard to predict and say for sure, but there are some out there that think that and wonder if it might be time, especially with the emergence of Sheila. So we'll see. I'm not sure that they're going to go that route. Not yet. Maybe after another year of them platooning together, working together, then it might become a little bit more comfortable to do so. When it comes to the Maple Leafs and old Mitch Marner, we've heard lots and lots and lots about Marner and his, I guess some people are saying, likely departure from the Maple Leafs this offseason. Well, Pierre LeBrun provided us with a significant update today as well to kind of pour some cold water on that, saying that as of right now, Mitch Marner and his camp have not provided a list of teams that they'd be willing to go to, and they have not even been asked to do so. So at this point, there's, according to LeBrun at least, he's not sure that they'll even play ball and give a list. That his agent, Darren Ferris, has been recommending to a lot of his clients and pushing a lot of his clients, and probably will do so with Mitch, to take it to UFA status into free agency on July 1. So why not take yourself to free agency and create an open market for bidding? So LeBrun feels there's a possibility here, which is contrary to a lot of other media, who I've heard numerous other reporters who know the team well and have a lot of connected sources saying that they believe that even last summer, Marner would have entertained a trade. But of course would have a lot of saying where he goes, depending on the market and whatnot. Clearly there's lots of say there. So he's going to take full advantage of that. No doubt. But, according to LeBrun, he just thinks everybody should pump the brakes, that they're not necessarily even asking for the list yet, and that Marner may not even provide one. So we will see if they do go down this conversation road and Marner will not play ball. They really will not have a choice. They painted themselves into that corner themselves. And if they don't want to sign him, he could walk for nothing. It could be his way. I mean, there's going to be a negotiation. Like, they're going to say, listen, we're not going to sign you to the money you want on an extension. Let's work out a trade now to get you somewhere where you'd be happier and where you can get that kind of money. And he may call their bluff and say, like, no, that's not, look, we'll work this out together. And maybe they take it to free agency next year. Marner has all the leverage here. If he really wants to push it to take it to free agency next year and to walk on his own, he can do that. But we'll see. There's enough reporters out there saying that they believe he'll want to, talk to them, and if they really want to move him, that he'll work with them in some capacity, that he seems ready to accept that. So time will tell who's right on this one. Now, of course, back on the weekend, we talked about some crazy rumors involving Edmonton Oilers star center Leon Draisaitl. Now, of course, the rumors had it that as early as this offseason, that there could be a trade involving Draisaitl to the Boston Bruins. That there were some reports out there that if he ever left Edmonton, that he'd be very interested in going to Boston. Now, there were other reports which didn't make any sense to me, but I wanted to talk about them and address and give my opinion. Indicated if Leon Draisaitl ever hit free agency in the next little bit, that he'd want to go to the San Jose Sharks because the owner is also, like him, German, and that they had things in common. I found that funny. I'm like, well, yeah, sure, he's German. That's great. Why would he want to go to his team, though? Like, looking at where the Sharks are compared to where the Oilers are, just doesn't make sense to me. Now, on the other side of it, the Bruins does make some sense. Like I said, at least they're a team that's always, near, like for the longest time now, been a top team, always contending, always right in the mix there, and they could certainly use some help at center. Now, this original rumor apparently started in Montreal with Georges Larac, the former NHL player, talking about he had connections, saying that Draisaitl was interested in Boston. Now he's elaborated more, saying that one of his sources is actually quite close with Draisaitl, and that he has become friends with David Pastrnak recently. Of course, Pastrnak plays for the Bruins, and that Draisaitl's been spending a lot of time in Prague working out with Pastrnak in the summer, skating and training and all that stuff, and they become pretty good friends. So Pastrnak has been clear. He's said it numerous times that he will do whatever he can to help the team in Boston, even if that means some open, active recruiting. So would he want to bring a top center like Leon to Boston? I bet you he'd love that, especially after losing Krejci and Bergeron. So at the end of the day, I do think that there's lots to say and think when it comes to Draisaitl. It's hard to imagine him not being an Edmonton Oiler. I do think how they end here in the playoffs will have a big role. If they win a Stanley Cup or they don't, may create an opportunity for Leon to consider moving or to consider saying, you know what, I'm never going anywhere. I want to stay here the rest of my career because we won a cup and I just love it too much. Who knows, right? It's hard to read Leon Draisaitl when you talk to him. I hear listen to the media asking questions. So we'll have to wait and see where things go. When I talked about that in the video on the weekend, as I mentioned, it just seemed to be a crazy rumor that, why would he want to go to San Jose? Boston to me made more sense. Would they move Allmark for Draisaitl? No, it wouldn't be 1-for-1 by any means. The Bruins could have to send multiple pieces, including a guy like Allmark, but it could get the Oilers their stud goaltender that they're looking for. And they could work in a tandem with Stuart Skinner. A Skinner combination here with Allmark would be great. At the end of the day, they could throw in some other pieces here as well to make the Oilers a stronger club. Now, would they be a better team? Maybe not, but they'd probably be a more balanced team. But that's what a Draisaitl trade would do. Anybody trading a top superstar, it's almost impossible to win that trade. So we'll see where it goes, but clearly if he's that good of buddies with Pastrnak and is willing to entertain going to Boston, that's something we're probably going to hear more and more about. I don't suspect, though, that we'll see anything this summer, but it is remotely possible. For a trade to happen, to me, it would have to be this summer. Otherwise, you're looking at the possibility that Leon makes sure he makes it to UFA, can talk to other teams. Then the Oilers will have competition for the next contract, and that's when you could see either San Jose or Boston get in the mix. But to understand a little bit more of the background as to why and where those rumors are coming from was interesting for sure. So we'll see once everything gets worked out just how Leon feels about everything, and will he leave the Oilers or will he stay? And if he does leave, does Boston make the most sense? And what are your mock trades? Let me know down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.